In the vast fields of Ohio, United States, a dark story echoes among the barns that dot the rural landscape. He was once a farmer of immense wealth and fertile land, known for his devotion to his children who came into the world. With each birth, a new barn was built, a tangible tribute to the future he envisioned for his offspring. 6 barns rose beneath the Ohio sky, silent witnesses to the prosperity and joy that reigned on the farm. But fate, merciless in its unpredictability, reserved a dark chapter for this family. When news of the 7th pregnancy spread, the farmer decided to build the 7th barn, a final tribute to the hope and love he had for his wife and their unborn child. However, what began as a gesture of celebration turned into an unspeakable tragedy. The early death of his wife and newborn during childbirth plunged the farmer into an abyss of despair. This tragedy marked the beginning of an inexorable decline. The farmer, tormented by grief and guilt, found himself unable to maintain the businesses that supported his fortune. The once prosperous lands became mute witnesses to the decadence that was taking place. It was in this desolate scenario that, according to reports, the farmer succumbed to insanity. Amid grief and desolation, the farmer persisted in his purpose of building the 7th barn. Each hammer blow was filled with a grim determination, a desperate attempt to find some solace in the fulfillment of one last tribute. Local artisans, initially hired to build the majestic structure, witnessed the gradual transformation of the farmer, whose face once illuminated by the smiles of his children now hardened into a mask of anguish and despair. As the days dragged by, the barn took shape with meticulous precision, reflecting not only the skill of the builders but also the farmer's unyielding determination to honor the memory of his lost family. Each plank laid was a fragile link between the glorious past and an uncertain future, a solemn monument that hung over the rural landscape as a grim reminder of what had been and what had been lost. The construction of the 7th barn, which was supposed to be a symbol of hope and renewal, soon became a marker of the beginning of a downward spiral of tragedy and despair. The farmer, once a man of strength and determination, began to succumb to the darkness that was spreading in his mind. Grieving for his lost wife and son was just the beginning. The responsibilities and pressures that he once bore with ease have now turned into unbearable burdens. Debts began to accumulate quickly. Without the farmer's leadership and careful management, the vast estates and family businesses fell into decline. The once prosperous agricultural empire was visibly deteriorating, bringing the family to the brink of bankruptcy. The land, which once promised abundance, was now a reflection of desolation that caused him to sink deeper into his suffering. The community watched in bewilderment and helplessness as the farmer, consumed by despair, became increasingly isolated. Loneliness and guilt turned his grief into madness. In an act of desperation, on a night that history would mark as infamous, the farmer committed an unimaginable atrocity. Armed with an axe, he took the lives of his 6 children, one by one, burying each of them in the barns he had built with so much love and hope. The farm, once a symbol of life and growth, has become a macabre cemetery. Each barn held not only the bodies of the innocent, but also the unbearable weight of the madness and despair of a man racked with grief. The community, in shock and horror, did not know how to deal with the enormity of the tragedy unfolding before their eyes. The darkness that consumed the farmer's mind culminated in a night of absolute horror, a night that would forever be marked in the history of the region. Seized by brutal insanity, he took an axe and ran through the farm in an act of desperation and madness. The silence of the night was broken by the dull sound of blows as he claimed the lives of each of his 6 children. Each murder was meticulously planned and executed with a cold precision that shocked the community. The farmer, a once respected figure, turned into a specter of terror, relentless in his mission to end the suffering he believed was rooted in his own offspring. Each barn, a symbol of pride and hope, became a tomb for the young, innocent lives he himself had brought into the world. The stories that emerged after the murders were of unspeakable cruelty. The farmer buried each of his children in the barns built in their honor, as if he were trying to bury his own past. The first son was buried in the first barn, the second in the second, and so on, until they were all buried under the soil that should have been a legacy of prosperity and future. The farm, now a place of death and despair, has become a macabre landmark. The neighbors, terrified by what had happened, kept their distance, and whispers about the farmer and his actions began to spread throughout the region. Children were prohibited from approaching, and even adults avoided passing by, fearing the specters of the innocent and the shadow of the farmer who, according to legends, still roamed the fields. After committing the terrible murders, the farmer, now a man completely consumed by madness and despair, turned to the last act of his tragic saga. The seventh barn, built with so much effort and expectation, became the scene of his own death. In a final gesture of desperation, he decided that this would be his eternal resting place. The night following the massacre of his children, the farmer prepared the scene for his suicide. Tying a thick rope to the top of the barn structure, he created a makeshift gallows. The stars in the sky watched impassively as he took his final steps, carrying the weight of his actions and the unbearable pain that had brought him to this point. By hanging himself, the farmer sealed the fate of the farm and consolidated its history of tragedy. The image of his body swaying in the darkness became a terrifying sight for anyone unlucky enough to pass by. The seventh barn, unlike the others, remained standing, a silent witness to the macabre events that had unfolded. From that moment on, reports of supernatural sightings began to emerge. Many claimed to have seen the ghost of the farmer swinging from the gallows, as if the final act of his despair were eternally repeated in that cursed place. The wind passing through the barn carried indistinct murmurs, which many believed to be the cries of the farmer and the children he had murdered. The farm, now abandoned and avoided by everyone, has become a symbol of the horror and madness that can arise from human suffering. The few who dared to venture there said they felt an oppressive presence, a palpable sadness that enveloped the place. The seventh barn, in particular, was avoided, as its interior seemed to exude an unearthly cold and a sense of grief that permeated even the most skeptical visitors. Thus the story of the Ohio farmer and his 7 barns was seared into the region's collective memory, a cautionary tale about the limits of human suffering and the depths of madness. The farm and its barns stood as a grim monument to the tragedy, reminding all who visited of the horrors that took place there. The story of the Ohio farmer and the 7 barns is a harrowing testament to the depths of human pain and the devastating consequences it can unleash. The once vibrant scene of prosperity has been transformed into a field of despair and death, where one man's madness has become a haunting legend. Barns, which were supposed to be landmarks of love and hope, became dark tombs, holding the macabre secrets of an unimaginable tragedy. This narrative serves as a powerful reminder of the frailties of the human mind in the face of unbearable losses. The farmer, a man who began his journey with noble intentions and unconditional love for his family, found himself gradually destroyed by a succession of misfortunes that culminated in a series of horrendous acts. His story resonates with a warning about the dangers of not seeking help when suffering becomes overwhelming. The legacy of the farmer and his 7 barns endures, not only as a local legend, but also as a dark study in the complexities of grief and insanity. Those who visit the site feel a heavy atmosphere, as if the events of the past still reverberate in the present, haunting the collective memories of the community. Stories of sightings of the farmer's ghost, swinging from the gallows, fuel curiosity and awe, keeping the legend of the 7th barn alive. As we reflect on this story, we are led to consider the lasting impact of personal tragedies and the importance of offering support and understanding to those who suffer. The farmer's desperation, while extreme, is not entirely incomprehensible, reminding us that compassion and empathy are essential to preventing pain from leading to such devastating consequences. We close this narrative with an invitation to reflect: what lessons can we extract from this tragic story? How can we better support those in our community who face internal struggles? The Ohio farmer and his 7 barns leave us with a legacy of unsettling questions that echo in the minds of everyone who hears his story. And so, with the 7th barn still standing, we continue to search for answers, hoping that knowledge of the past can illuminate a more compassionate path for the future. Before we end this video, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the story of the Ohio farmer and his 7 barns? Have you heard other real horror stories that left you intrigued? Leave a comment below and share your experiences and reflections. If you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more real horror and mystery stories. Activate the bell so you don't miss any of our next videos. And remember, there is always more than meets the surface. Until next time, and stay curious.